Warm greetings, everyone. On behalf of W4W Foundation, a think tank instituted as Citizens Collective, we welcome you to another session of Friday Waters. Today, Friday Water is on water arts, and the session is titled When River Speaks with the Rest About the Rights and the Duties. Before we get into the session, let me just briefly give you an overview of what Friday Waters does. Friday.Waters is basically an offshoot of the signature series by W4W Foundation on Wednesdays for Water. And in Friday.Waters, we have Water Arts, which is today, Water Talkies, when we bring in films, Water Thesis Club, when we invite PhD scholars and researchers to present their research. Then Water Reading Club, when we invite authors, editors to talk about their publications. Sometimes when we get a jackpot, we also have Meet a Maestro on Friday Waters. The idea of Friday Waters is to have a fun yet fruitful evening when we talk about water, which is looked at beyond the science in different possible ways. And that's why we have these variations. As we take the session today on When River Speaks with the rest about the rights and duties, we will actually traverse across the rivers of India. And today, I'm going to play the role of Rivers of India from the house of W4W and also the host of your session. And to do the conversation with me, we will find out who is going to represent the rest, which is the society at large. And I'm going to straight away get to find out how is society looking at the river and why do they do what they do and what's going on. So from here on, W4W today has the privilege to really become the voice of the river. So shall we start the conversation here and we find out who is going to represent the rest and what is the rest thinking about the river and what do they do? Since W4W is something which is 4.5 years old, but river has been since antiquity in this planet, and it has been flowing and meeting the banks of the knowledge from the origin to the destination, which we call usually as the sea or the ocean. And India is blessed with rivers. So if as a river, I need to know what's going on, I need to hear the voice, also give my voice to somebody. So as a river, I'm grateful to W4W to become my voice for the day. So, who is there to really speak with me today? Knock, knock.
Hi, I'm Shrishtee. I am speaking on behalf of humanity as of now. Hello, River. Thanks for having this conversation with me, this experimental conversation. Um, I am a researcher, writer, activist who is very interested in exploring stories about rivers, rivers in general, how people and communities for centuries have lived along the river, what relationships do we share, and not just that, but how rivers are also part of a larger habitat and how that informs our cultures, our way of being, and how we ourselves are rivers in many ways. So I'm somebody who's exploring that. Um, I was born on the banks of River Ganga in North Indian Plains in Kanpur. And as a young child, when I would go near Ganga and see her beauty, her majesty, but also her pollution, I would not be able to articulate very well as to why that was happening. Why would humans who revere a river, hold her sacred, call her a goddess, would also pollute her, desecrate her in every conceivable way? And it didn't make sense to me then, but I didn't have words to articulate this stark contrast that all of humanity lives with, that the earth, the rivers, the nature that protects us, that nurtures us, that is so sacred, yet is so polluted, and yet we counterintuitively destroy it and call it home. So, as I started to understand this contradiction, I started exploring and going to places and people and communities who were trying to protect these landscapes, protect these rivers, protect ecosystems. And I was beginning to see that, and I'm still continuing to see and learn that there is so much that people hold as worldviews, and there is much larger political, social, cultural systems that are impacting how people relate to rivers. So it's not the loss of our worldviews, but it's the loss of something much more profound that's happening. So I explored that, and I look forward to your questions, your explorations as we, yeah, do this.
Thank you, Srishti. And you use the word words, and I was wondering, as a river, do I have words? All I know is to flow. All I know is to accommodate, to immerse. Of course, there is an interaction happening with you,
Mm,
the entire humanity and biodiversity. I would still like to know, to find a point of convergence where we can have a language to speak.
mm.
I don't have a language, as I said, but do you have a language to speak with a river?
Yeah, that's a, that's a very good question. As Thanks for that question, River. Um, so for humans, movement was something that was an initial way that we made sense of communication with each other, and that movement was so much informed by the movement that we were seeing around in nature, and what rivers, water in general, inform us about that movement, but also about ourselves, is about the language which itself is liquid. And so when we speak with rivers, when we speak with rest of nature, we are speaking in a language that that can only be understood, or that can only be experienced when we are embodied, when we have embodied ourselves into it. When we are next to a river, or maybe dipping our feet in the river, or maybe flowing or swimming in the river, that we really understand what it is to be not really to be a river, but what it is to be liquid, what it is to be flowing, what it is to be not feeling the gravity so strongly. So rivers in that sense pose a very and for I think most difficult of all problems of language. And in many ways humans have articulated the relationship with rivers, but the language that both can understand is often when we are on the banks of the river, and when we feel like sky and the water is merging, fishes and birds are wading your waves. And I'm reminded of what Rabindranath Tagore would say when he was on the banks of Padma River, and his so much of his writings about Padma River are so beautiful, where he says that he fails, his words fail, language fails to express what he feels for the river. But what he says is so beautiful, that her, Padma, speech is the speech of the humble home, not the language of learned. Her rhythm has a common kinship both with the land and the water. Her vagrant stream is unjealous of the green and golden wealth of the earth. So, what this reminds me and tells all of us is that this language of kinship, when we are in water and living with it, uh, really helps us to see life, and really helps us to see our relationship with rivers in a much more deeper and profounder ways. And in some ways, also, so many communities across the world have expressed their relationship by their identity of being a river itself. So, for instance, the community in New Zealand who got the rights of the river recognized says that the river is me and I am the river. We are the river and the river is us, for the Wanganui River along the banks of which they live. And I feel that's such a powerful evocation, because in the modern life and in the modern setup, we have forgotten that a part of us is also rivers. And although we embody ourselves in this human flesh form, 99% of our body is liquid. And so we are formed by the rivers and we are nurtured by the rivers. So there is no necessary separation between the two. And so a language that helps us connect to that deep interconnection is what maybe the language is. between the two of us, a river and a human.
You touched my heart with two important words I heard from you from after when you talked about the language of fluidity. You had a word Padma, and kinship. Padma is my sister. If I see myself as Ganga, and when you talked about you being born at the banks of Ganga, I was thinking how I start from Gangotri and go to become one with the ocean at Ganga Sagar. And I'm constantly reminded that this is a civilization that is worshipping me day in and out, with calling me as Ma Ganga. And here is a little daughter Shrishti of the Ma Ganga, if I may put it rightly. And you yourself is talking about there is an ounce of river in every body, even if it is embodied in a different shape. I'm constantly worried and concerned when I look myself in the global standards and I see myself to be the second most polluted one. I start from Gangotri as transparent, as fluid as possible, and I'm reminded to go far to the Oriental mythology of even Taoism to say, be like river, be like water, be transparent. And I do start like that. But when I find myself in Ganga Sagar or somewhere in those 200, 2,500 kilometers, I am not the same as I am at Gangotri. So when humanity is worshipping me like a god or goddesses, or the mother of all rivers for that matter, what is going on in the head?
Hmm. Yeah, as I was sharing with you, that was exactly what my question was, that why are humans doing this? Um, and only now maybe I am more clear about the question, not really the answer, but
If I may interrupt in between, because when you were a child or a young person, not so well equipped with the arms of education, you had as innocent question as a river, or I have today, even today. I'm sure you have some answers which will help me not to clean thyself, but at least to have a level of comfort to live with humanity.
mm, yeah, I think I have some sense of why this is happening. I'm not
Mhm.
say I'm fully sure about why we are so schizophrenic about our own existence. That why a river so sacred, revered, and goddess is also polluted. And why can't we see the contradiction of what we are doing to our rivers? For instance, Ganga, where it emerges from in Gangotri, flows through so many and has so many tributaries and goes to so many places, but has the destination to reach the sea. But we dam it, and we stop its flow, and we try to. And why do we do it? Is the question that many of us ask. And that's because we think we can control the flow of the river, that we can control the river, we can control what it does and to whom it does. And why do we do it? Because we feel that, rivers water is being wasted if it is going to Bangladesh. But who are we? And so for me, a more profounder question that has become, or I still want to understand it even more, is that why do humans have come to believe that they can and are able to control the fate and what happens to nature? Like we are in control and in power, and this is such an abusive power that that we somehow come to believe. And it gets even more complicated when we use the language that she's our mother, you are our goddess, but then we continue to control you and have power over you, and also say that we can decide where you go and where you don't. I think that is the problem. That is something that, as humans, as civilization, we need to figure out where that emerges from. But so for a lot of people and communities and activists and researchers who have been working on rivers and trying to when I entered this question, I realized that there are so many people who have asked these questions so much more deeply, and have worked in resolving these tensions and complexities of human existence. So I started reading and trying to understand and talk to people who have already done that. And what we collectively understand is that this sacredness is not a problem. This sacredness, of course, exists, and is believed by all the communities that live along the rivers, not just for Ganga, but any river that nurtures and protects them and flows through their homes. But what has happened is that this sacredness has become performative. It's only about going to a river bank, performing your rituals, and it is individualized. And so it's not about a collective, it's not about actually understanding what we are doing or what is happening to the river. But if I go and take a dip, I will be absolved of all my sins. But what sins are being committed in my name, in my development to the river, doesn't become our question of existence. And another problem with this sacredness is that it has also become institutionalized. And so it is through the institutions, through religious groups and other such things, which are not really about protection of the river or its ecological integrity, but how can we continue to perform these rituals that are then, disconnected with the ecology, biodiversity, and the real nature of the river. The other element of it is also what humans have come to like believe what is a good life. And I think that is also an essential connected to the idea of what it is to be human. And so we humans have come to believe that a good life is doing beautification of the river by constructing concrete on the banks of the river, removing and uprooting all the trees, and then creating cement structures where people can go and have and a scenic view, which we believe is scenic, which is concretized, which has boxed the river. So this idea of what is good and what is beauty, we have come to lose that sense of connections from what real beauty is and what real development is. So we're chasing and going after something that is that is not really protecting nature, that is not really conserving the beauty of nature or its integrity, but rather that it can be spaced, it can be boxed, it can be protected. And so we have lost this sense of interconnection, of living in close connection to the ecosystems that we live in. And so we have disrespected our natural flows, our contiguities, and in many ways we have done what one of our beautiful colleagues quoted. We have done the pujan, we have done the naman, but we have not done the manan, which is the reflection. So we are doing all of these things, but we are not really focusing on why are we doing this, what is actually the real meaning of doing these rituals. And I'll give you one small example which you must already be aware, but just to highlight that, I was listening to this fisherman from Banaras who was telling that how, because on the banks of the river Ganga, where a lot of commercialization of tourism has happened, where a lot of dredging has also happened to make the river bed much fuller so that the big cruises can go along, and all the small boatmen have been displaced from there. Along with these fishermen and boatmen, another creature that has been displaced is small turtles that are found right on the banks of the river. And historically and also religiously, turtles, people tree, shivling on the banks of the river are considered to be a sacred communion. And so those turtles are displaced. And this fisherman was saying that they have been put in a turtle sanctuary or something like that from the river bank, and it impacts the whole ecology of that space. And that made us all wonder that what is then sacredness? It loses the real meaning. Why were those turtles actually there? What was the sacred harmony of all of that is completely displaced, because we want to create, because sacredness is institutionalized, there's profit, and that's how we look at the river and how we can get most out of it. And so we really forget the ecological connection of also the sacredness and the reverence that was always there in our worldviews.
Hmm. I don't have so many words as you may be knowing, but I have so many inhabitants where I don't see humans to be the only inhabitant, but just one minor inhabitant in my whole body.
Mm.
And what really surprises me often is the dominance of humanity over the biodiversity, and as well as the very water which they need for their own survival. You know, as a river, I will survive. I have a longer, much longer life than humanity will have or can have.
Mm.
But when I look around my sisters and brother rivers around the world, where humanity is not worshipping the river, I find them better than what I am being here. So I am often questioning not my own existence and my flow and my quality, I must say. I am questioning the very essence with which humans connect themselves, not only with me as river, but also with other beings around the river, on the land, in the water. So because I am always short of words, I pick just few words from the many words you are giving to me, the word that resonates my thinking, the words that makes me understand some things. So pardon me if I don't understand you fully, because I think it is a two-way misunderstanding which is going on. Neither you understand the river, and neither river is able to understand the human behavior to the river. I picked two words from your last conversation. One word was reflection, which is very much understandable because I am a space which reflects not only humanity, but the entire cosmos as well. You can see me as the eye or as a reflective agency for the whole planet. Another word which I picked from your conversation was interconnectedness. The fact that I am not standing alone as a river. I have my family of kinship, I must say. I have streams who may be seen as my children. I have lakes, ponds who may be my grandchildren, or whatever relationship as humanity builds in within their own society. But this whole Anthropocene way of looking at me and taking everything out of me, what do you give back? And how do you see the relationship as you see in the society? I'm sure you have a family, like I have a family. What I miss is that you are you able to see my family? Because my health or my well being will be dependent on the well being of how the lakes, ponds, streams are doing. Do you understand this interconnectedness? And would you like to tell me something about your own connectedness with your own society and family? Where do you work? How do you work? What does it mean as a social network? Is it something like an ecological network? Is it something like a water network? Or do they have any resemblance or do they have no resemblance?
Hmm. So I think the river is understood, manifested, lived by different humans in different ways. There is no homogenized notion of um, how we relate to the rivers, and there is no homogenized vision of how we say impact the rivers. So I would make a distinction among our relationship with rivers in terms of who we are, where we are placed, what power do we acquire in societies, in terms of decision making, and who we are. And why I say so is because the sense of interconnection that you're talking about, for several communities living along the river, maybe not all, but many, that interconnection, that river is always in relationship with them. Um, they cannot imagine their existence without the river. And it's not necessary that the river must be sacred, that the river must be a goddess, which you were rightly pointing out, that even if we consider her, Ganga, your sister, as goddess, we still we desecrate her in every conceivable way. So maybe that's not even helping us to protect our rivers. And so, what we see is that this sense of interconnection is not just about understanding the river is a family, but also that river is part of our family, that we are river's family. And there's no sense of my existence without the existence of the river itself. And I'll share my own learning about that through the walks that I've been doing along um, one of your sister rivers, but also Ladakis believe that Indus is a male, so maybe your brother river. But Singhe Khababs, which is what Indus is known as in Ladakh, the river that emerges from the mouth of the lion, and it comes from Mount Kailash, and along with that, three other rivers also move in different directions: Karnali, Brahmaputra, and Satluj. And when Indus is one of the biggest basin, and it undertakes a long journey, very very long journey, and there's so many human communities that are dependent on the river, and each human community wherever the river flows has its own ways of reflecting life practices, and engaging with the river. In Ladakh, for instance, the river is not considered sacred like the way it's considered like the way Ganga is considered in say, different parts of India. Among the Ladakhis, the river Indus is something of a life force, something of a powerful darya, which is not just actually a river but a sea, because it's so big, or well, it used to be so big. Is so powerful that people would refrain going close to the river. The creatures of the river were so mythical and difficult to see that people would actually stay away. But only communities who were along the banks of the river were also dependent on their agriculture and other life practices around the river, and those life practices continue to be still alive and existing today. And because those life practices, such as their agriculture, their water channels that come to their agriculture fields, are still alive, people are questioning why the river has become so polluted, why the water in the river is disappearing. And they know, for one, that it is disappearing because something is changing in the climate. There is not enough water, there's no enough snow. Something we are doing in terms of blocking the water of the river, that it has become much more warmer than it used to be. There were fishes that have disappeared. All of this tells us that people have keen and deep observation of how the river has been, what it was in the past, or he or she was in the past, and now what it has become, and why that is becoming. Some of it is in their control, but a lot is not in their control. And which is where the other humans, people who are in power, people who take decisions, people who have a different worldview of how they look at the river. So while people in Ladakh look at the river as a lion river, so much more powerful, people may be sitting in institutions in government institutions or technological institutions, where they don't see river as a powerful lion river. They see as a river as a water flowing from one source to the other. How can we harness energy? How we can make most of the river in terms of how much can we get from her. And so they build dams. They don't care about what happens to the fishes if they disappear. So those humans are to be differentiated from the other humans who possibly don't have the capacity to take those decisions. But what I'm trying to maybe share with you here is that it is at this moment, for humans, not just in relationship with rivers but just overall existence, it's like clash of worldviews. There are these worldviews that hold not just the sacredness but also their eco-cultural practices along that's sacredness or their relationship with the river. And then there are these worldviews that are about the extraction and about the pollution and about uh, resourcing nature and rivers. And these clash of worldviews is often the result of how we humans have come to see rest of nature, which has many more layers and many more words and many more concepts that as a river you might not be aware, but I would be happy to share.
Because as a river, all I know is to flow.
Mhm.
And I also know a Hindi line which I hear often on the Ganges when I'm flowing there. अविरलता में ही निर्मलता है.
Mm.
So let the river flow. This is what I know, and this is what my pupils know who actually revere me spiritually, not religiously alone, who revere me as scientifically. But I am seeing in the last century that there is a different way of looking at rivers, at me. And I look at around the world, and there has been some competition with my existence, with the existence is may not be the right word for humanity, but the development of humanity, or
Mhm.
the growth of humanity, where energy becomes an important component, and I become one of the primary source of energy. And this is where I see science and technology has come on very effective tool to humanity to even gain the confidence that I can be tamed. And I have been tamed from places. If I look myself back to Narmada, to Kaveri, to Mahanadi, to Brahmaputra, to Ganga, I can go on and on with my all brothers and sisters here. I have been dammed almost every few hundred kilometers. At Ganga, I am dammed nearly 200 times, many, many times. To control me, is it to control me? Is it to let me flow? And how far human endeavors can go? They have been successful in last 1 century. I have no doubt on that. But has there been a genuine cost and benefit understanding as who benefits and who are really affected? I see humanity itself is divided amongst each other. Then I don't get surprised if I am discriminated from humanity. So, as a whole, humanity itself is not benefiting fully from the way I am tamed. So, what I am trying to say is what I see is that first there's a section of society which is tamed, and and the entire ecosystem is tamed. You change my course of flow, you change my quantity of flow, you change my inhabitants from this fish to that fish, you change my plants, and the very interface where I meet with my soul kin, which is land, is completely misunderstood. The edge where I not only meet humanity, but I meet land, I meet the sky. That is the place where human endeavors have put their final authority. It's not only transactional where the dam is placed, it's also along my flow. I was okay when there were ghats here and there when people would come and revert to me. But then in last few decades, I am seeing there is a constant endeavor to also tame along my flow, not only on the transact and store me at certain time. What do you think? What's going on? Can I be tamed all along? Is that what humanity thinks about river?
Yeah, I think humanity thinks that everything can be tamed. everything that certain powerful humans feel that is important for them to grow, to progress, to make more profit and develop. Anything is possible, and they can tame anything, and control anything. And a lot of destruction that we see today is coming from this worldview, or the understanding that humans are at the top of a pyramid, and everything is below them. And so they can control, tame, and destroy, uh, without even thinking of the consequences on immediate consequences on so many people who might be impacted, so many humans who will be impacted by it, the future generations, but also, of course, you, rivers, and the interconnected beings and everything else that comes along with it. So, and why this worldview and why this supremacy exists is, it goes back many, many, many years ago, wherein certain humans believe that they can control how nature works, and then could control how women work, and could control how certain other bodies, other beings could be controlled. So it's not that humans have just been oppressing nature, humans have been oppressing each other. And it comes very much from this oppression that we started first with oppressing nature, rivers, mountains, and ecosystems that we are inhabiting. So, in that sense, this worldview that has come to acquire most of dominant imagination, which feels that anything could be exploited to get more and more and more and more, and that there's no end to it, um, is the part of the problem. But what I also maybe River want to share with you is that when all of this exists, there's so much also that many of these humans, many of the other humans are trying to do, to resist all of that. And I'll take you to, you mentioned Narmada, but I'll take you to the other northeastern part of the landscape, where in 2010 a big dam was coming up in a river called Lachu, which comes from Kanchenjunga mountain. And humans living along this village, Lachung, protested against this big dam that was coming up. They organized their whole community. They said that the river cannot be dammed. It's an important source for us. That the river, as I was telling you earlier, that the river is not something to be made money out of. It's important for us. If something happens to the river, how can we think that we will be protected from all that destruction? So we cannot allow this dam. And it did come up in their village. It did come up in much further in downstream, where certain villagers agreed to it. In 2023, that dam broke and it killed many humans, maybe many innocent lives that were maybe not part of that decision making. But it was a big reminder to everybody who lived along that river, and reinforcement to the villagers who actually did not let the dam come up in their village, that we cannot ensure our protection, our development, our growth, our prosperity if we don't protect our rivers, if we don't protect our ecosystems. And so, what I'm trying to tell you through all of this is that there's so many people, so many communities who are challenging this oppression, who are challenging this destruction. And it is very, very hard because this particular mode of dominant knowledge is based on detachment, it is based on abstraction, it is not based on any relationship. So, the further you get from the river, the easier it is to say, okay, let it be damned, okay, let it be polluted. But the closer you are, the more focused you are, the more attentive you are, the more embodied your living and your life and livelihood is with the river or any other ecosystem that you're living along. You would think 100 times before sanctioning it for any destruction. So, in some ways, there is a continuous um, struggle that is going on in protecting rivers and ecosystems that we are most dependent on. And many people are asking whether there are any, if we don't want a livelihood through polluting or destructing our rivers, what it would look like if there was something else that we would do. And the same community that I was telling you further down that downstream that river, in a group called Affected Citizens of Teesta, is trying to actually showcase that people can live without damming their river. They can have good sustainable livelihoods without damming the river, and they have these beautiful ways of protecting their ecosystems, their rivers, their mountains, and also ensuring livelihoods for them. It's of course difficult each time, but so many activists, so many young people, researchers are trying to do that. So, how for us, all of us who are from outside, who are in different places, it's a struggle for how do we protect these, how we amplify these stories, how do we also, um, you know, uh, make them go many places so that many other people could be inspired that yes, rivers can be protected. Yes, we can live a life differently. We don't have to all go in the same trajectory. And yes, rivers can actually be healed. And there's so many also other examples like that in different parts of the world where rivers that were extremely polluted, that were also dammed, um, dams were decommissioned. So rivers, as you would know, can come back to life and they can be healed, and some damage can be reversed as well. So we are trying to bring many of these threads of beautiful examples of where people are being river guardians, protectors, keepers of knowledge, and also their ecosystems. But it's not easy.
Yeah, I again pick few words as I am not a river with many words, or I do not have much language to speak. I get the word, guardian.
Mm.
Sounds like who is guardian to who for me, you know. So this whole idea that humans will protect the river is something new for me, which I have to learn that humans will protect me. Because in the past, I knew that humans worshipped me because I was protecting the humanity. So something has changed definitely with science and technology for sure. And that also makes me more curious when you talk about habitation which are different. And I was already curious why some people or some humans live in this some way, and then there's a huge concentration of people in some parts where I am more stressed. And I'm flowing in Sabarmati, when I'm flowing in Mula Mutha, I reach to this huge density of people where they are trying to do as much as possible to me, despite the fact I'm wounded time and again.
Mm.
And I learned from your ministry that there will be many more of these wounds or scars which will be put on me to get more and more out of me. So So the next word which I picked from your last conversation was life. This is something I relate very well because I know every children in this planet, when they learn first time about the word water, the second word they learn is life. So I am curious now how the highly thinking, educated people are looking at giving life to river, where river itself was a life.
Mm.
So, what is that life which is going to be protected or to be given to the river that is in the plan of humanity? I'm asking these questions to prepare myself. As you know, and I am repeating again myself that my life is much longer than the life of humanity.
Yeah.
So, what is the life that is going to be protected? Is it again for humans? Is it for the river?
Mm. I think humans have forgotten that um, in the time scale of, or the time scape of the existence in this planet, in this universe and cosmos, we might and we are uh, less than a blink of an eye. Um, and so, this arrogance about how we can control and tame rivers, etc. We have forgotten that rivers are so much more older and so much more wiser and like an ancient beings. And so we have forgotten how to relate with our elders. We have forgotten how to relate and be in humility of what has existed so much more before us. Um, and so because we have forgotten that, what through many of our these efforts we are trying to do is to remind a large section of humanity that rivers are alive, because people have forgotten that and they don't seem to remember. All of us seem to, exactly because of this education, this process of becoming a human that can progress and grow and develop, we forgot what is around us. We forgot where our water comes from, where we come from. When we are in our mother's womb, we are surrounded with water. Water is so essential to what we are and who we are. So we could swim when we were in our mother's womb, but we forget as we come to this world. So it is about going back to in some sense our mother's womb and remember who we are and where we come from, and it's only with that remembrance that we will realize that rest of nature is alive and thriving as we are, because we are not separate from it. We are just a very tiny part of it. um, and as simple, but yet as stupid as it might sound to you, that how can humans forget that we are alive. um, it is the task for this century, for the years to come, for humans to continuously remind that rivers are alive, mountains are alive, stones are alive, creatures are alive, and they deserve the respect. They deserve um, the right to live and exist in this world. And what is important and what is maybe hopeful to remember is that there are so many people and communities who are already practicing that. It's not completely gone away from this world. Yes, a lot of humans need to be reminded of, but the examples of it is in front of us. And so, how can many of those be protected? One, how can be many of those be visibilized? Second, how can many of those be spoken more about, be connected to each other? Because a lot of these things don't come out in our education system. Education system tells us about how many megawatts energy can be produced from a river. Not that the river is an interconnected being, it's alive, it has existed in this world for thousands of years or more, and that it holds so much knowledge. We would be nothing without a river. All of these things are not taught to us in educational institutions. So it's the work of popular education and work to remind humans that ask the question, if you're living in Pune, where does your drinking water comes from? Go and visit that place where drinking water comes from. Realize that you are actually not drinking the water that you're drinking from any of the rivers that flow in Pune, whereas your water comes from some other place where farmers are suffering because your water is being taken from there and it doesn't go enough to their agriculture fields. And understand why, when you actually destroy nature, pollute river, there are so many other humans are also suffering because of that. So see the interconnected web of life, in its whole beauty, but also complexities. And and only when we are able to see that and understand, not really what you rightly said, that river doesn't need protection from you, it doesn't need protection of humans, it needs protection from humans. And so in that sense, the true guardians of the rivers are the ones who will protect the river from the destruction that humans are doing to the river. And so it's actually humanity protecting itself from humanity, because nature has always existed, rivers have always existed. You've been here for thousands, millions of years, so you will be there. But it is really humans protecting themselves from humans, and in that sense, protecting the integrity of life itself in some ways.
I see you are an empathic being, and at the same time, I'm constantly seeing that over time, and you have also iterated that it is like living there forever since antiquity. Maybe I was flowing here, maybe I was flowing there. But what you said just now, I just want to confirm to it that I understood you rightly when you gave this example, because what I hear from Narmada is what is happening in the downstream and what is the suffering happening in Amarkantak in the upstream and Shahidol, and also somewhere in between in when it meets Madhya Pradesh and Gujarat, where people are suffering. And because I am tamed, Narmada is tamed there, how people suffer from it. So flowing is an inherent nature, and it is not just flowing of the water. It is the flow of culture, cuisine, creativity, much more. It is the flow of knowledge from place A to place B, which I understand. So when I'm flowing as water, it's just not the water. It is carrying a lot of things along with me, which is serving the humanity in some way or the other. But what I always get surprised and intrigues me, if the inherent nature of me is to flow, humans have created some boundaries for their own administration. And the conflict, is it between this boundary and that boundary where I am played or I am at stake, be it interstate conflict, Kaveri, Narmada, be it international conflict, Indus and its 5 tributaries between India and Pakistan, Ganga and Padma between India and Bangladesh, Mahakali and Sharda between Nepal and India. We are all sisters here. We are sisters and brothers here. We have no conflict with each other. We have no boundaries. We are connected. If I have to survive, she has to survive. If he survives, then I survive. This is how we are interconnected. So I'm trying to bring the conversation towards closure to understand why humans have so much of conflict with each other. You may be too young to answer this question because human civilization has lived for long. And if I speak like Ganga, I am different. If I speak like Saraswati, who was my ancestor before, I speak differently. Then I speak like Indus or Narmada or Kaveri for that matter. But I am always surprised the way humanity is fractured in the society by various layers. And then you have the administration and politics, but there are also many social cultural layers. Who can do what? Who can take water from where? And that goes so big when you talk about nation states,
Hmm.
where humans are not even party to it, but there is a huge, I don't know what is there, but there are a set of humans who decides who will get water and who will not get water for that matter. If there is so much of division and fractured in the humanity, how do you think you can connect? Do you have any answers? Because if you are not connected with each other, what are your ways to connect with the river?
Hmm. Yes, what you're asking is again a big, big question. And you're right, I might not have the answer for all of that. Um, what we have done is that the ways that humans lived in the past, respecting the contiguity of nature, living in bioregions, living and respecting the boundaries. that were defined not by nation states, not by people who colonized us, but by humans understanding nature and how it flows and how rivers flow. That's how our cultures came about. That's how our languages came about. As you rightly said, our cuisine came about, belief systems came about. And so, in some sense, over the not so long ago, actually, only 500, 600 years ago, that humans started coming up with these divisions, which were not based really on anything logical, but based on some abstract idea of what is nations, what are nation states, what is democracy, what is governance, how do we control populations. And all of that has happened over the last 500, 600 years, even not even before that. And so, in those 500, 600, 700 years, we have come to divide our landscapes, our countries, our ecoregions and bioregions through abstract governance, purely governance, abstract lines and divisions that cut across natural contiguities, that cut across natural flows. And that has divided us, and that has made us forget that uh, damming a river in creating Farakka barrage and damming the river in India, um, of course, is going to impact and deprive farmers in Bangladesh. But not being able to see that interconnection is what the stupidity of humans is today. That a lot of those climate refugees who are impacted because India has dammed the river then come to India, and the impact it has on their suffering, and also subsequently on populations where all of those people are coming in. So because we don't see this interconnection, we don't see the impacts that our actions would have on thousands and hundreds of people, we continue to do so. But all of this is based again on an abstract idea of what we are trying to protect. But more so, it is required that humans, not certain humans or certain section of humans who are making these decisions, but humans um, on along the banks of Ganga in the border actually are able to talk to each other and connect and speak. And there are some efforts being made in some parts of the world, but more, we need it more. But in the world we are currently living, it's becoming even a lot more difficult. But how can people in the Indus Basin, how we can come to define ourselves as people from the watersheds, not necessarily people from, say, India or people from here, but people of watersheds. Where I come from is the river. Or I didn't share the earlier beautiful example of Dimasa people from Assam who define themselves. Their name Dimasa comes from children of the big river, which is Brahmaputra. How many of us can say that? Um, so it's the reminder for ourselves of where do we come from, where, which watershed we belong to, which is when maybe a beginning of some dissolving of these abstract boundaries and demarcations that we have made between us, which are so flawed and actually in some sense based on just divisions but not really respecting nature.
Okay. You remind me of a situation when I'm flowing in a place like Kerala, where I have in every stretch, I have a different name based on the human settlement that is built around me. When I flow there, sometimes I am called A, B, C, D, and I feel that my identity is intact, and humans have made their own little identity with the river in their stretch where they are living. So that's also one way of dealing with me. So my identity stays intact, and the humanity lives its own identity. The blurring of identity, I don't know how humans will handle. Again, I reiterate that I'm here to stay, whether human stays or no. And I hope humans realize this. And I also hope that there are more of people like you. And I find you a very emphatic person. And that's why I am wishing that what will be your idea for a place like this, which is having rivers in abundance, which is having streams in abundance, which is having lakes and ponds in abundance, should really do some basic changes or should bring some things back which was there in the past, that we live more in harmony with each other. I know some of you are working. I know I have met more than 600 people here who have really showed their respect, who have showed the hard work they are putting to bring to everybody the very idea of living with river or living with nature for that matter. You are very young, it seems, however, you must be having some dreams how to live with river. Would you like to share with me so it becomes more hopeful for me that humanity can live with me for longer than the way it is planning to live with me?
Yeah, I have my dreams, and my dreams are inspired by several of those communities and people that you must have also encountered and met, and I have also met. Of how do I get more embedded in a life that knows and is continuously flowing uh, in with the rhythm of a river. And it's much more difficult to do maybe in a city, which is where I am right now. um, but really finding myself in a place, co-creating that place, nurturing that place, and I'm dreaming of that place. At that moment, I'm not sure if there is any such place. Maybe in pockets of it do exist, like I was mentioning about the Lachumchu River, but so much is also changing there. But I imagine that I live in a place where my rhythm of life is informed, where I'm revered every day, to really see what it is to be, and embody what it is to be a river. So I can hear the rivers sing. I know how the rivers sing. I hear so many people living along the river sing that they can hear the river sing, that they know the river is alive, that they can speak to the river and they understand what the river says. And I think that can truly happen when your everyday life is along a river that's living, thriving, its ecosystem, its health, everything, and yours too. Then, so I dream of living along a thriving river that nourishes me, and I nourish her by being along it and celebrating it.
So, what I understand when you say singing is the sound that is coming out of my flow.
Yes.
So now, so I know that I am a singer too,
Yes.
and I have life as well. But what I also wish to understand that you have some beautiful names given to me.
Mm.
What I also see that there are names to every human being. So there is an identity to
Mm.
all of you. And one such thing which I relate time and again in this region, maybe my other brothers and sisters around the world, they also have some of these observations. But I want to bring my last observation to you and see if I am seeing it the way humanity is seeing it. When I look at the developed nations, I see the state of water and women are very important indicators. When I see the state of mothers, daughters, sisters, daughter in laws in India, I feel no different than they feel. The state of water and the state of women in India are very much relatable. And it also gives me an indication why I am so much polluted, abused, misused, overused at many places. When I look at the way women in this society are used, I don't have any patriarchal problem. However, I see that problem in humanity. Where do you see yourself as a woman, as a water? How can we grow together to make this society better? Because unless and until women and water works together, If the whole idea of humanity or civilizational growth was to develop, then we have to understand what exactly is or what truly is development for that matter. And if you look at the very essence or fundamentals of development, and the top most indicators come as the state of water and the woman. Do you relate with that? And actually, that is my last question to you.
I do. When I think of Ganga as goddess, and I think of all the pollution that humans, all of us, have done to the river, and I wonder why, as we started talking about it, why we do it. I think the major problem is that we consider her goddess, we call her Ma, and so we think and believe that she can absolve all our sins and yet flow and yet be okay. And that comes from this belief that we can continue to do and exploit our women, our mothers, our sisters in whichever way we want, and they will still be there for us. And they will still protect us, and they will still nurture us, and they will still bring life to us. And I think that's where the problem comes from, isn't it? Because we think we can do that, continue to oppress, continue to exploit, and also get whatever we want out of it. But as Ganga tells us right now of her condition, that as powerful as the river that she is, um, she is she's polluted. She's really polluted. Ganga is in many ways, by a lot of scientific studies that tell us that it's dying. 60% of the river is almost dead, and so many species have disappeared, and so many species are dying. So it will not be able to give us what we want. And until and unless we are concerned about our own futures, we'll have to take care of her, and we'll have to nurture her, and we'll have to really truly listen to her. And that's what is also about, so closely connected to the condition of women in our society. They cannot continue to nurture, they cannot continue to take care if we continue to oppress them. That's counterintuitive, that's stupid. And as soon as humans, men, realize that, I think our own ways of relating with so many elements of complexities of human and the oppression that we face, but also how we relate with nature would change. So, as many people have also said before, that it's the pollution of minds in many ways, right? That what we are doing to nature is also what we are doing to ourselves. This comes from the pollution of mind, that we believe that some things, some humans, some people are weaker than us and so must be oppressed. And that's how we think of nature, that's how we think of rivers and whatnot. And they are not, and which is what nature tells us, and which is also what a lot of struggles of communities also tell us. Um, so it is high time for humans to realize that that's not what a developed society is, where there's oppression of rivers, oppression of nature, and oppression of women, oppression of people of other caste, oppression of any sort. It is about a collective, interconnected. It's not that there's no conflict, it is just that each of us are able to celebrate the diversity of all what life brings in. um, if I must say that, at this moment it looks so far off in distance to be able to realize this dream, where this operation is not happening. But there's continued hope in all of those people who are trying to change this and trying to challenge this. And so, just to be on the right side of the discourse, where we will do a little bit, like a sparrow who is trying to diffuse the fire in the jungle, and the monkey asking her that how will you diffuse the fire with those little droplets that you are trying to pour there. And she says that, well, I would like to do that because that's all I can do. And that's where maybe my and other people's source of inspiration and hope comes from, that we'll do our little droplets of diffusing the fire. I don't know if it changes anything, but at least we'll do what we are supposed to do at this moment as a responsible citizen, responsible being of this planet and this earth.
Wow, that was a very humble and I must say honest uh, understanding as well as commitment to live with me for as long as you can. And it is not only about living, it is also about living healthy and living happy. And if water is polluted, you rightly mentioned, if river is polluted, not because it is polluted, it is because there is some pollution in the society. What I gather from all other creatures around, nobody is polluting me. It's only humanity that has to learn. And I so much feel connected when I hear many women around talking about and working on it. And that is why I was just curious to ask this question to you, thinking that if there is any resemblance and why the world looks at water and women so closely. And that's where I felt a bit of composure, I must say. When I'm speaking to you, I felt I'm speaking to my sister. Thank you so much for asking me some light responses and also answering my strong questions. I hope it was not too difficult for you. You have a long life ahead to work with me. I don't know how long I can be of use to humanity because humanity looks at me very differently than the way I would have imagined them to look at me as a river. Nevertheless, we are going to be here. It's up to humanity how they want to deal with me. And the rage of the river is always round the corner. But the rage is not to destroy anything. Most of the time, I see the destruction is because of what humans did to themselves, not because what I do to myself. With these words, we have a commitment to each other. And let's try to live life like flowing of the river. As transparent as possible, as reflective as possible. Take our own sweet time to touch the knowledge of the banks and also see what is there for each one of us to hold on to each other, to live with each other. That's it from us today. Thank you so much, Shrishtee Bajpai, for this wonderful conversation. And before I let you go, I would also like to announce the next Wednesdays for water session, which is on December 17th. And when we actually talk about our Wednesday sessions are actually more scientific sessions. And on December 17th, we talk about geospatial technologies for water resources management and restoration when we bring in people from straight from space research organizations and they talk about their examples from east to west, how they have used GIS and other spatial technologies to study wetlands. Next
Nice.
Monday, appreciate women, and we call it Monday Munching and Musing with Women for Water to acknowledge and appreciate their water endeavors. And we have journalist, very well-known journalist Chandrani Sinha and a young researcher Jyotsna Jaina, who are going to talk about their life as professionals in the water sector. That's on December 15th, which is on Monday, right away. And all our sessions are at 5 p.m. Today, the river was played by me, and this is Mansee from the House of WforW. Thank you so much, all of you, and thanks, Srishti, again. You did well. Thanks a lot. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.